We want to welcome everyone here tonight. This is our second session of Isaiah's Bible study, The Hope of the Suffering Servant. We are looking at Isaiah chapter 6 through 12. We're going to take a glimpse of Isaiah's vision and his call in chapter 6, and then we'll talk about the root. And at the end of chapter 12, we'll see how the hope of the suffering servant is Jesus in verse Isaiah chapter 12 at the end of tonight's lesson. But let's get started with prayer, and we'll watch the video afterwards. Father, we give thanks for this day, for this opportunity to study your word and to learn more about Isaiah, but also to look at the call that you placed upon his life, to come and to prophesy to a nation who was wicked, but to provide the hope that they needed in that time. We still read these words as hope for us today as we look to our suffering servant, the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Lord, I pray that you will bless us with your presence tonight. Open our hearts and minds to receive this teaching. We pray this in Jesus' holy name. Amen. So, again, like we did last week, we will watch the video from Right Now Media. Let's see.
Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 6. This is one of the more famous chapters of Isaiah. It's Isaiah's call and his vision of the heavenly throne room. So let's read a little bit of it now, Isaiah 6, verses 1 through 8. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord seated on a high elevated throne, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs stood over him, each one had 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and they used the remaining 2 to fly. They called out to one another, "Holy, holy, holy is Yahweh of heaven's armies. His majesty and splendor fills the entire earth." The sound of their voices shook the door frames, and the temple was filled with smoke. And I said, "Woe to me, I am destroyed, for my lips are contaminated by sin, and I live among a people whose lips are contaminated by sin. My eyes have seen the King, Yahweh of heaven's armies." But then one of the seraphs flew toward me, and in his hand was a hot coal that he had taken from the altar with his tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, "Look, this coal has touched your lips. Your evil is removed, your sin is forgiven." And I heard the voice of Yahweh saying, "Whom shall I send? Who will go on our behalf?" And I answered, "Here I am, send me." Now there's so much that we could say about this story of Isaiah's calling. The holiness of Yahweh put on display, the corporate solidarity that Isaiah has with his people, recognizing that since he is a part of a people whose lips are contaminated by sin, even though he himself may not be as contaminated, he still sees himself as guilty. But there's a picture being given here within the call of Isaiah that I want to focus on that kind of tells us what the rest of the message of the book of Isaiah is going to be. There exists a righteous remnant of people within Israel, meaning not every single individual person in Israel is opposed to Yahweh. There are some that love and serve him. And we met some of these people even here in the book of Isaiah, like Hezekiah and Isaiah himself. And yet they too will experience the horrors of exile. And why? Because they are a part of a people whose lips are contaminated by sin. And what does Isaiah expect to happen when he sees the presence of Yahweh? He says, "Woe to me, I am destroyed." He expects to die, and yet he doesn't. But he doesn't just walk away from the experience either. A seraph takes a burning coal and purifies his lips, which may seem weird, but remember the way Isaiah described what was happening. He was from a people whose lips were contaminated by sin, so it makes sense within the vision and the picture for his lips to be what are purified by the coal. So what's going on here? Israel has a problem, and Yahweh is going to deal with that problem by cleansing them with coal from the fire. And yet when we look back at chapter 1 or continue reading in the rest of chapters 1 through 39, that cleansing will be like a purifying fire. It will bring some destruction, but Yahweh will not completely destroy all of Israel. And that's what's found at the end of chapter 6 and going into chapter 7. We're not going to read it now, but Yahweh says that a nation is going to come. Assyria is going to come down and they're going to chop down and burn the nation of Israel. And Israel will be like a stump of a tree that's been cut down and charred. And yet in chapter 6, verse 13, it says that this stump is representing a holy seed of Israel. And then in chapters 7 through 9, Isaiah has these conversations with King Ahaz, in which Isaiah promises him that Yahweh will bring him and all that he represents down, that the destruction will be greater and greater, but that after, Yahweh will raise up a new king. And then in Isaiah 9, this king is said to be a child born of a virgin who will be the wonderful counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father. Probably one of the passages from Isaiah that you're most familiar with that comes out around Christmas time. And all of that leads up to chapter 11, where Isaiah picks up the imagery that he introduced in chapter 6 and 7 of Israel being like a tree who will be chopped down and scorched. And he says this in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. A shoot will grow out of Jesse's rootstock. A bud will sprout from his roots. Then Yahweh's spirit will rest on him, a spirit that gives extraordinary wisdom, a spirit that provides the ability to execute plans, a spirit that produces absolute loyalty to Yahweh. He will take delight in obeying Yahweh. He will not judge by mere appearances or make decisions on the basis of hearsay. He will treat the poor fairly and make right decisions for the downtrodden of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth and order the wicked to be executed. The image here is that this stump that remains after the exile, after the Assyrians and later the Babylonians chop down the tree of Israel and Judah, will not be completely dead. A sprout will grow out of it as it begins to regrow. And this is such a cool image and a culturally appropriate one for Israel. I grew up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and anyone in my neighborhood knows that you can't actually kill a tree by chopping it down. You have to completely uproot it. And sometimes if you don't have the tools to uproot it, you have to drill holes in it and pour this chemical in, hoping to kill the root system so that that tree doesn't come back. And Israel would have known this well in an agrarian society. Chopping down a tree usually doesn't actually kill it. With sunlight, nutrients, water, and time, that thing can and will grow back. Slowly, but it will. And that's the image that Isaiah grabs onto here. The stump of Jesse, the house of David, isn't done. Yahweh is not done with his people. This doesn't remove the fact that the tree will be cut down. The stump will be scorched. Israel will be destroyed until, like chapter 6 said, there is nobody left in the land. But that's not the end of the story. Now in our next video, we'll look at chapters 13 through 27 of Isaiah as we continue to read of this coming destruction. And like we're becoming accustomed to, we're going to look in chapters 1 through 39 for those glimmers of hope within.
All right. Did y'all catch all of that information? I'll be able to answer some of your questions from the handout as well.
I got some of the questions, but there's a few that I just didn't get.
Okay. Well, that's why we have Bible study, and that's why we are here, so we can talk together. So as we looked in Isaiah chapter 6, we see now that we are in his grand vision of God and his call to the prophetic ministry. Some writers say that this was out of order chronologically, meaning that he should have gotten that call in chapter 1. But Isaiah was still doing ministry in chapter 1. It was just, this is a prophetic call to do prophetic ministry for the people of Judah. And so the focus of the vision is God himself, as we will see, and how it symbolizes Isaiah and how Isaiah symbolizes the people of Israel. But here we see how God is high and exalted, and he is worshipped by a holy seraphim, seraph, a special order of angels. Now, Isaiah is overcome with a sense of his own sinfulness, but is cleansed by a call from the altar. Isaiah responds by eagerly volunteering to serve as God's messenger, as we see in verse 8, or the famous hymn that we often sing, "Here am I, send me, Lord." The offer is accepted, but Isaiah is forewarned. God's people will not respond to his messages. They will be a stiff-necked people, as we have seen, and they will ignore his prophetic messages. But when Isaiah asks how long this condition will persist, he hears a gloom reply. Judah will be deaf to God until the land is desolate and empty, basically when they are burned to the ground. Yet enough life will remain in the stump, which we will talk about in that stump, of new life to spring up again. Just like he was talking about a tree, it will have a new life in that stump. So our very first question is this: what would the righteous remnant in Israel experience?
Mhm. Destruction,
Yes.
a desolate land. Their land's going to be destroyed to basically nothing. It's going to seem like. So, although they are, although there is righteous people still left, they are going to experience the same as everyone.
Right. Just kind of like Isaiah's call story. He is a righteous remnant. He is a few among many who is righteous in God's sight. Kind of like how God chose Noah and his sons to be saved from the destruction of the flood. And so Isaiah is going to be a symbolic for everybody else. He's going to symbolize that shoot, that remnant of Israel. Now, even though there are some who are still faithful to God, they will still experience the horrors of exile because they are part of the people whose lips are contaminated by that sin. They have rebelled against God, and God is going to punish them for their sins. Now, we know that the sin that Israel was committing from last week was how they just basically disregarded the worship stuff. They didn't have the right motives. They didn't have the right heart when they approached God. And so they were rebelling against God, and God wanted them to put their faith in him above the rituals, above the worship stuff that they were doing. And so this hypocritical worship style life was basically disregarded in God's sight. They forgot how to be a people of justice, a people of righteousness, a people of love and grace in God's sight. And so God is going to destroy them. He's going to wipe them out, but a few will remain left behind. And that's kind of goes to our next question. What does Isaiah expect to happen to him in God's presence? So look at verse 5 for those. When you look at verse 5, Isaiah says,
Oh, I'm sorry. He was thinking he was going to be destroyed.
yeah, because he is a sinful person. And whenever you have sin before God, that sin just does not mix with a holy God. And so he realizes how sinful he is. And he just knows it is over for him. There's only been a handful, according to the Bible, no one has ever seen God face to face and lived. Moses got a glimpse of his glory in Mount Sinai. We know that Jesus was obviously the Father and the Son together in the Mount Transfiguration. But we see here Isaiah has a glimpse of God as well. He gets a glimpse of his glory within the temple. And so he is struck with a sense of his own sinfulness. He's overcome with fear about the potential consequences of seeing God while in his own sinful condition. This vision of God's majesty, his holiness, his glory made Isaiah realize he was a sinner, just like everybody else in Israel, everybody else in Judah. He was a sinner. Now, when Ezekiel saw God's glory, he too responded with humility. It kind of reminds us of Job and Luke, Jesus and all of these other people with the humility before God, because you bow before God. We know that from Philippians chapter 2. Every knee will bow before Christ and confess that he is Lord of their life. And so Isaiah, here in this particular temple, had pronounced the woes. He had pronounced the threats of judgment on the nation. But now is by saying, woe to me. He realized that he was subject to that same judgment as the people of Judah. This was because he was unclean. He was a man among uncleanliness. When seen next to the purity of God's holiness, the impurity of human sin is more evident. The prophet's unclean lips probably symbolized his attitude and his actions as well as his words. For a person's words reflect his thinking and relate to his action. And so I'm going to think about that for a moment. When Isaiah was speaking this judgment upon the people, he was causing that sin, he was causing that destruction upon them, but his lips also damned himself as well, because he was part of the unclean people. And so Isaiah identifies with his people, who also was sinful and a people of the unclean lips. Away from this particular experience, either a seraph takes a burning coal and purifies his lips, which may seem weird, but remember the way Isaiah describes what was happening. He was from a people whose lips was contaminated by sin. And so as a prophet, it makes sense with the vision and the picture for his lips to be what are purified by the coal. So what's going on? So as a pastor, as a preacher, my lips has to be pure. I speak love. I speak life to people. I should try to encourage and exhort them up and build them up. If I begin to speak death and curse other people around, then I'm springing that cursing upon my own self, and then I have those unclean lips. Isaiah knew that, and he needed his lips to be clean in this moment. Thoughts, questions, or anything you would like to share about Isaiah's call? Okay. What about the seraphim? Which is question 3. What is a seraphim or seraph, as you see in verse 6 and 3?
An angelic being.
Yep. Want to add anything else to it? Anybody?
It's the highest in the order,
Okay.
in the ninefold of the ninefold.
Where did you get that at?
Google told me that one.
Okay, that's a pretty good answer then.
It's associated with light and purity.
Good. So y'all been Googling these answers too.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, seraphim are the burning ones. They represent the fire around God's holy throne. They burn the impurities in a sense. So yes, they can represent the light, but they are a part of the hierarchy of angels. Now, some have them as number 2 in the ranks of the angels. They have cherubim, which you find those in Genesis. And then you have the archangels. Now, for me, my list would be the archangels, but some would say archangels deals with human beings, and so they are on the lower list, just like the cherubim and the seraphim. And so seraphim, in a sense, are the angelic beings that are mentioned only twice in the Bible, and we see both instances within Isaiah. The word seraphim is plural in number, but it is impossible to say from Isaiah's particular vision here just how many he saw. The prophet spoke of them as though they were quite familiar spiritual beings, which seems somewhat curious since they are not mentioned elsewhere. Isaiah describes each one as having 6 wings, 2 that shields their face, 2 that cover their feet, and 2 that help them fly around. Now, most probably the seraphim were an order of the celestial beings, like Singer said, comparable in nature to the cherubim, and engaged in a somewhat similar form of service around the divine throne. Now, I have a handout about the angels and some notes about the angels, if you would like me to go into detail about that at the moment. Or we can keep on asking.
Does it explain why they cover their eyes? Because I couldn't find anything telling why they had wings to cover their eyes.
Because of God's holiness. That's all I could give you on that one. They know how holy he is, and so they try to protect themselves from that holiness as well.
Makes sense.
Do y'all want to hear about the other angels?
Yep.
All right. Let me pull up my document. There we go. So, as you notice in the beginning, when God creates the heavens and the earth, obviously he created the angels at that same time as well. But in Genesis, when we see, or Genesis 2 and 3, we see 2 classes of people that God creates. Obviously the angels, and then us as humans. Now, the angels, creatures, are never referred to as being created in the image of God. However, they do have a certain likeness to humans in that they are intelligent beings. They're rational. They can communicate. They are spiritual beings capable of moral reason and choice. They have free will just like we have free will. Now, the term angel refers to all the spiritual creature beings be of the God kind who exist and function without the physical bodies. Now, angels, as we see throughout the Gospels, they cannot procreate. They're not like us in that they cannot recreate other people or other angels, and therefore they are lower than man. Now, in that capacity, now full likeness to God must include the certain creative capacities, and scriptural evidence strongly suggests that angels are intelligent, but cannot. And with respect to such creature capacity, angels are created beings, therefore they do not multiply, and their total population has remained the same since the beginning of creation. And so this is just my personal pet peeve as a pastor. Angels, when we die, when a person who believes in Christ dies, they do not become an angel. They do not receive their wings. They are a saint, and they are a saints in heaven that are enthroned around God's throne room. And so he already has angels. He doesn't need more angels. And so we are the saints around God's throne room in heaven. Now, this is my list of the hierarchy of the angels. I have the archangels as a top one, but again, you can have them in either order. Archangels are the principal angels. Some believe that they have the highest rank in the celestial order, and there are 7 of them according to the Apocrypha. Apocrypha is some of the Catholics, what the Catholics add on to the canon of the scripture. The Orthodox, like the Greek Orthodox or the Roman Orthodox and all of those, they believe that there are 4 archangels that stand in the 4 corners of the great throne. The 4 that they believe are the top 4 that most of us understand, and that is Michael. Michael is, his name means who is like unto God. He is the chief prince. He is the angel for Israel, in a sense. He is the protector of the people of Israel. You'll see that in the book of Daniel and how he protects the people of Israel. He is also in charge of the angelic host. The second archangel that we are often familiar with is Gabriel. Gabriel was the one who announced the birth of Christ to the shepherds and to the he spoke to Mary and Joseph as well. His name means the mighty one of God. Now, some believe that he will be the one who sounds the trumpet at rapture. You find that in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And then we have Raphael. Raphael is another angel that is within the Orthodox and Catholic. He is not mentioned within the canon of the scripture, basically our Holy Bible, but is mentioned in the Apocrypha within Tobit and Enoch. Now, Raphael, he represents the healing of God, and he is second among the 7 archangels. Then the 4th angel is Uriel, basically Uriel. His name represents the light of or fire of God. And then 5th is the Raguel, Raguel. His name means the friend of God. He is within the Jewish tradition and in the Oriental Orthodox tradition. 6 is Serakel and Serakiel, or however you would like to pronounce that. I'm butchering these names, I know that. But this archangel communicates the prayer of God, or prayers from us to God, in a sense. And then the last one is the Ramel. He is, again, part of the Jewish and the Oriental Orthodox tradition. He represents the mercy of God. And so that's all of the archangels that we find within the Catholic tradition and the Protestant tradition of faith. The second ones are the cherubims. We find those in Genesis, obviously, when they guard the Garden of Eden. Their description basically are guardians. They guard other things. If you look at the scriptures about the cherubim, they have 4 faces. They have 2 pairs of wings. They have legs like men, feet like calves, and 4 human hands. Prior to the fall, Satan, or Lucifer, was the chief of the cherubims. You find that in Ezekiel 28, verses 11 through 16. And so these, again, angels are the guardians in nature. Then we have the seraphim, which we've already mentioned earlier, just a few moments ago. The 4th set of angels are the 4 living creatures you find in the book of Revelations, chapter 4. They have the face of a lion, the face of an ox, the face of a man, and the face of an eagle. These 4 living creatures praise God without ceasing around his throne room in Revelation 4. The 5th one are ruling angels. Now, you're more familiar with this in Ephesians chapter 3, but Paul writes to this church about the principalities and the powers. And so we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. So these angels are principalities, they are powers, they have thrones, they have authorities, they have dominions, and they have might. And just like we say in the book of Daniel, there are evil powers, in a sense, who have power over particular parts of the country. These angels, the good angels, have that same type of power over good countries as well. And then 6 is the guardian angels. Now, there are 2 mentions of the guardian angels. You find that in Matthew 18, verse 10, and in Psalms 91, verse 11, I think it is. But guardian angels are basically what the title itself. Some Christians believe that every person has a guardian angel, but the Bible does not specify that we have a guardian angel, like every one of us have a guardian angel. And then the last one is the angels that are associated with horses and chariots, which you find in 2 Kings chapter 2 and 2 Kings chapter 6. The most modern with this is the UFOs, the aliens. People are believing that these angels that are associated with these horses and chariots are probably the UFOs or the aliens that we find, or the supernatural stuff that we can't determine what it is. And so people are believing those are angels instead of aliens, in a sense. Okay. Any questions about that? Did I confuse?
Yes.
Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
I have. Okay. So number 1, could you send that out to us if you don't mind?
Yep, I will do that. I just need everybody's email. Put your email in the chat, and I'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you. And then, so you mentioned that there are angels that's considered like those that associate with people. Would that be the ones, I guess? But then I was confused because you mentioned the archangels really don't, but Gabriel did with people. So like which ones, I guess, would be the ones that are considered the ones that would affiliate or associate with people?
Yeah. So archangels did affiliate with people.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
They are the messengers in a sense.
Okay.
Michael, if you recall, Michael wrestles against one of Satan's angel for the body of Moses. I think it is. He wrestles another angel about the prayers of Daniel as well, and so they are literally here. They're fighting for us as well. They're fighting against the devil and his angels as well.
So I guess in a sense that's comforting to know that the highest of the hierarchy are the ones that are fighting for us. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I just find comfort in that.
Yeah. Well, and they are warriors. They are not the cute little cuddly angels that we often see on TV or these little Cupid. They're not those type of angels. These are mighty warriors. If you read, there are some who believe that these angels, like for example, the angels that fell from heaven, and you find having relations with women in the early part of Genesis, the Nephilim, in a sense, these were giants. And so these beings, these angelic beings, are huge people. They were like 7 feet or high or taller than that. And so these are mighty people, mighty beings, in a sense. Any other questions?
Well, I just feel like we could have a lesson all on angels because I just learned so much in that short period of time.
Yeah, there's a whole, I've got a book in my office. It has a whole doctrine of angels, the doctrine of Satan, all of that. And so, yeah, there's a whole teaching about angels. And they have a whole doctrine of angels, in a sense, a teaching about that. We as Protestants, we don't delve into the angels too much. I don't know why, but we leave that to the Catholics and the Orthodox for some reason.
And the ones in Revelation, they were called what?
The 4 living creatures, Revelation
4
4.
living. Yeah, okay. I didn't know if they had another, just 4 living creatures. Okay.
Yeah.
And the only place that the seraphim is mentioned is in Isaiah. That is the only place.
Yep, Isaiah chapter 6. Did y'all know that Lucifer was a chief of the cherubim? We'll talk a little bit more about him later on, but yeah, we'll get into details with him.
I didn't realize he was chief of the cherubim. I knew he was over whatever group he was in, but for some reason, I was thinking he was in the archangels for whatever reason. I don't know why I thought that,
Yeah.
but thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, we had that conversation once, and you told me that when we were talking, when you made the comment about how people that died don't become angels. You get tired of hearing people say that and post it.
Yeah, that's just a pet peeve of mine. Yeah, there's nowhere in the Bible that it says that we get angels or we come back to earth. But I mean, it gives those who are grieving comfort. I know that, but at the same time, it's not biblical. And so I want them to be very biblical and know that they are saints. Just like we are saints here on earth, we are saints in heaven. And we are resting from our labors. Let's
So
move.
I like to,
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, so I guess in my mind, I kind of like to think that, and I think I've had this discussion with maybe Crystal, I can't remember, but even like in Kara's situation where she has been sedated and just kind of in this place where she's not been with us, but she's alive, but she's obviously somewhere in a place. And I just, would love to be able to hear her story when all this is said and done, just to know, is there like this transitional place where you go and you're with these angelic beings? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just, you hear so many stories of people that are have near-death experiences, or find themselves in places where they said that they felt a peace and comfort. And I just wonder, is it in this place, this heavenly realm, where there is these angelic beings that's present?
Yes, I believe that. I believe the angels are with us. I mean, seriously, I do believe that we entertain angels unaware at times. Kara probably have witness or is witnessing angels in her room. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Raphael, the angel of healing, probably was there when she had that miracle that took place a couple of weeks ago. And so, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. Now, I would say there is probably a little transition period or place, or whatever you would like to call it. I don't know how to really explain it, but from my understanding, to be absent from this body, we are present with the Lord. And so we transcend into heaven with him. From my understanding, when Jesus died on the cross and he descends into hell, as you find in Peter, he gets rid of the paradise. He gets rid of the purgatory that the Catholics uses. And so there's no more paradise, where we see the rich man and Lazarus story, where Lazarus is in the bosom of Abraham in paradise. When we see the thief on the cross who say, and Jesus tells him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." He removes that and moves them now into heaven with him. And so I believe in that when we die, we are physically in heaven with him in that moment. And so Kara could be in that passing period in a sense, so that transition place. Yeah. Good question, though. I like that.
But I don't know if you would be able to come back and like actually not really live or like tell us exactly what you saw or exactly what happened. I don't think that I just don't think he would give you the power or the knowledge to do all of that.
We wouldn't be able to explain it, not in our words, in a sense. And you find that in Revelation with John and how he couldn't really describe what he was witnessing. Paul writes about that in Corinthians, how he was caught up into the third heavens. They can't really describe heaven as we understand it because our minds can't comprehend it. As sad as that sounds. So even though they call it, we're walking on the streets of gold, it may not even be gold. Okay? But that's what they understand. That's what they see. It may be something else that we just can't understand or comprehend. Okay. Question 4. Are you ready? Let's move on. Why is Isaiah's lips purified?
I think we kind of hit on that earlier a little bit when we were talking about the contamination part. And he said in the video too, the contamination was coming from essentially the lips of people. So why not? Why that would be the perfect place to start with purification, would be the lips.
Right. Yeah, and so it's a symbolic action to signify the removal of the prophet's guilt of his sin as well. And this is what the entire nation needed as well. So the Judaites needed to respond just like Isaiah does. He acknowledges his need to be cleansed from sin. Judah needed to do the same thing. Though they, like through the priests, burned the sacrifices at the temple, their lives still needed the purifying action of God's fire. And so the rest of this particular chapter that we find in Isaiah 6 was preached to the people of Judah. Significantly, he was not called to service till he had been cleansed. After hearing the service words in verse 3 and verse 7, he then heard the Lord's voice. Now, in the Old Testament, fire is not a cleansing agent, but the expression of the active, even hostile holiness of God. And this is something that I learned during the study. I always thought fire was the cleansing process, but according to this, the Old Testament, it is simply the expression of God's holiness. However, this fire from the altar was the place where holiness was accepted and was satisfied by the death of a substitutionary sacrifice. The live coal thus captures the ideas of atonement, appropriation, of satisfaction and forgiveness and cleansing and the reconciliation that we find, obviously through the blood of Christ, but also for their sacrifices at this particular time. And so the Lord ministers to us at the point of felt need and the effect of instantaneous. He deals not just with sin as we are aware of it, but as he sees it in guilt or impurity. And so he deals with the whole inner corruption of our sin, just like he does for Isaiah. So how will God cleanse Israel in question 5?
Just one thing, Pastor Trey, if you go back the part on chapter 6, verse 6, where it says, "See, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for." To me, that almost also introduces Jesus coming on the scene and how Jesus is going to come and, basically give his life for our sin and atone us for our guilt. And I just highlighted that because we're in the book of Israel, and we know that that's coming in chapter 9, where that is prophesied. So I like to think that this is kind of an introduction to about how that atonement is going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the blood of Christ. Yeah, it atones us, and that's what God is. He's showing them it's a symbolic, yes, of what God is or what Jesus will do in the future. And just like he will cleanse Israel. And let me just help you answer that question. When we see him cleaning Israel through this coal or through the burning process, in a sense, he uses the Assyrians in this particular time. The Assyrians is going to be another nation who comes in and they wipe them out. And then, and next week, that's what we talk about. And I don't want to give you the answer, but Babylon will come in and destroy Israel as well. And so the Lord answers that Isaiah was to proclaim the message that his judgment will come, that is, till the Babylonian exile actually occurs and the people will be deported from the land. And so the land will remain desolate. They will have nothing left but those who are left behind, which is a very few poor people. When Babylon comes into play into Israel, they take the wisest, the richest with them. And that's where we see Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They go into the palace with King Nebuchadnezzar. They are the wisest one. And so what happens is the Babylonians is training their minds. He's changing how they think and allowing them, once when they go back to Israel, they're going to have the mindset of Babylonians. And so they leave the poor behind, those uneducated people behind, and they leave them to basically die off for themselves. They leave the land desolate. But there is a faithful remnant, what we find in the book of Daniel. And so, though Isaiah does not live this long, God he keeps him preaching even though they don't listen to his words. And so Isaiah is probably obviously discouraged by such a negative response and terrible results. But they are assured by the Lord that not all is lost. Even though he cleanses Israel, a remnant will be left. And God compares the remnant to the stumps, which we talk about. They just stumps of trees, of oak trees. And from this stump or holy seed of a believing remnant, God will come again and allow others to believe in him. Though Judah's population would almost be totally wiped out or exiled, God promised to preserve a small number of believers in the land. And it reminds me of the time of the wilderness when he allowed only 2 of the spies to get to see the promised land, Joshua and Caleb. All the other ones got wiped out because they didn't believe in God's power, that they didn't believe that God will rescue them and overcome the giants that Joshua and Caleb saw in Canaan. And so God just simply wiped them out. And he's going to do the same thing for the people of Judah in this particular time. He's going to wipe them out and leave a few behind so that they will restore what is good, what is right in God's sight. So moving to chapter 7, that's a whole lot in chapter 6. We're going to try to skip forward pretty quickly now. In chapter 7, we see a purified fire.
Okay, I found this on the web for we.
Hold on, my Siri went off.
I'm not sure I understand.
So the purifying fire in chapter 7. We see that Isaiah is asked to trust in God's plan. He's going to undergo his own purification. That's what we find in Isaiah 6. But now it will be chopped down like a tree with its stump scorched and burned. But God says this smoldering stump is a holy seed. You find that in Isaiah chapter 7. It will survive into the future. It's a small sign of hope. But who or what is the holy seed? And that holy seed is the remnant of Israel. You see, the rest of the section offers up an answer. Isaiah confronts Ahaz, King Ahaz at this particular time, who is a descendant of David and a king of Jerusalem, and he announces his downfall. God says that the great empire of Assyria will chop Israel down and devastate the land. But there's still hope. Because God's promised to David, he will send a new king named Emmanuel, which is God is with us. We hear this name a lot during the season of Advent or around Christmas. Now, Emmanuel's kingdom will free God's people from the violent, oppressive empires. This is the hope of the suffering servant. This is the king that the people of Israel was anticipating. But Isaiah goes on to describe this coming king as a small shoot of a new growth emerging from the old stump of David's family, the holy seed. Now, this king will be empowered by God's Spirit to rule over a new Jerusalem and bring forth the justice for all the poor. All nations will look to this messianic king for the guidance, and his kingdom will transform all of creation by bringing that peace. It's going to be a new kingdom here on earth. Now, in these chapters, the prophet Isaiah focuses on the deliverance of God and how it's going to bring through the nation. But Judah's deliverance from the Aram and Israel alliance in chapter 7 pictures her ultimate deliverance and the fall of the Assyrian Empire. It results in the deliverance for Judah, and it pictures the fall of the nations as well. And so what happens is we see in this particular kingdom, the holy seed, the believing remnant will sing a song of thanksgiving in chapter 12. And so it goes from chapter 7 all the way to chapter 12, describing how this is going to take place. And so what does this stump represent? I've said this a few times already now. It's the remnant. It's the shoot of Jesse. And if you look in Isaiah 11, verse 1, says a shoot will come up out of David's family. It will grow a shoot, yes, a new branch bearing fruit from the old root. And so he is prophesying about the Messiah, using the tree analogy. The stump represents God's judgment because of the sin. Obviously, he has cut down, he's leveled the people of Israel. But now a fruitful tree was chopped down and appears dead. But the tree, likely an olive tree, is going to be alive under the ground. There is still hope for the people of Israel. From the stump comes a shoot that becomes a new tree. And despite the present destruction and despair, God is faithful and he is at work in the people's lives. Jesus will come to bring hope to the world. And additionally, the Messiah's arrival is described with a tree. If you look in Isaiah 53, which we will get to later on, he will grow up before them like a tender shoot. And so though the godless nation of the north, the kingdom of Israel, had already been destroyed by the Assyrians, its root dried up, and though their own nation, the southern kingdom of Judah, was also besieged and cut off, Isaiah assured the king and the people that Jerusalem would survive their root. And so this stump is the symbolism of the remnant of Israel. And so, any questions about that? Any questions about the stump of Jesse, or Assyria, or Babylon? I know we're getting close to the hour, so I don't want to try to keep you too late, even though you're all at home anyway. So it's not like you got to drive at night time. But question 8, I think I may trick some of you on this one. So, who is the child in Isaiah 9?
Was it Jesus?
Yes and no.
I see. I knew.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me yes and no.
So most of us obviously believe when we look at Isaiah 9, it does talk about Jesus in a sense. It is the prophetic name of Jesus. But when we read the story in Isaiah, there is another child that comes to play, it comes up to mind in the story of Isaiah, and his name is Hezekiah. He is actually the last good king that we find in the book of Isaiah. And Hezekiah is the one who, almost on his dying deathbed, asked God to keep him alive for a couple more years so that he can see something happen, so that he can see his kingdom continuing on. But Isaiah basically is talking about Hezekiah in this particular time. And so because Hezekiah is called the mighty God, that is his name as a sign that foretells God's defense of Jerusalem through the miraculous, sudden, massive death of his enemy's army. Hezekiah is also called the everlasting father. Because of this name is a sign which foretells that God will add years to his life. He does that. He adds 14 years to Hezekiah's life. And it basically, he says, go and say to Hezekiah, thus says the Lord of David, your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears, and behold, I will add to your days 15 years. And so instead of 14, 15 years. And that's in Isaiah 38, verse 5. Hezekiah is also called the ruler of peace, because this name is a sign which foretells that God would be merciful to him. He is the punishment for the lack of faith in the Almighty will be deferred, and peace granted during the last years of his rule. So he does have peace in his lifetime. And so that's why a lot of the Israelites in this particular time believe that Hezekiah was this son or this child that is prophesied in chapter 9. When you talk to most Orthodox Jews, they would say this was Hezekiah, not the coming king that we thought of Jesus Christ. But for us as Christians and looking at hindsight 2020, we know that this obviously is the Messiah. It is Jesus Christ who fulfills these prophecies. What's your thoughts about that, or any questions on that?
So where does it talk about this being Hezekiah? I mean, my commentary, everything talks about it being
Jesus.
the Messiah.
So later on in Hezekiah, later on in Isaiah, it talks about Hezekiah fulfilling these roles in his life. So we'll get into that later on in the lessons. But in Isaiah 38, that's when we see how he lives longer. He has everything he meets most of these credentials. There's one thing he does not meet. And so if you look at verse 6, he is not the mighty God. Obviously, Hezekiah was not God. He was not divine, and so he could not fulfill that. But he meets most of the other requirements, and that's why they thought Hezekiah was the child that they was mentioning in Isaiah 9. Does that help, Ashley?
I look forward to learning more.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it for you. I want to give you all the answers too early. With that, last question is Isaiah 11, verses 1 through 4. What does the imagery of the shoot mean? We've answered this question, I feel like, a few times. So what do you think?
I don't
It
know if
is.
I don't know if it's supposed to be a trick question, but once
No,
again,
it's
I
a
mean, it's
straight-
going back to Christ.
Right,
I think he's off of Jesse's line. I mean, that shoot is him. That branch that's coming off. If you look at a family tree, that's the imagery we're seeing. I think we're seeing is that shoot's going to come off of off that lineage, and that's what it's making reference to.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is talking about the Messiah coming out and how he is going to be the fulfillment of God's promise, and that is the descendant of David will rule forever. Now,
And
again, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say in my commentary that it's, and I have it underlined. I guess I studied it at some point, but from that stump a new shoot will grow. The Messiah, he would be greater than the original tree and will bear much fruit. The Messiah is the fulfillment of God's promise that a descendant of David would rule forever. 2 Samuel 7:16.
Yep, that's exactly what I have. I think that's the Bible I told you to get. So we got the right Bible. But yes, he is the Messiah. When you look at all of the spirits and talking about that, now, well, we can go a whole lot more into detail about these things, but Christ fulfills all of these details of this prophetic son, this child. But again, they were thinking of a king. They wanted a king like David to come in and rule. Jesus didn't do that. And so that's why he is called this suffering servant that we will find in Isaiah 53. But everything else, they pointed towards a king who is going to conquer them, who is going to deliver them from the oppressed. And so this is just a hint of the Messiah prophecies that we find in during the season of Advent as well. So, any other questions before we close? Because I don't want to keep you too much longer. And I'm about to email you all the document for the angels.
Thank you. I think it was very good. I appreciate the I guess the information you gave us about the angels that helped shed some light on some things. And I look forward to hearing more about Hezekiah too as it relates to chapter 9. I had never heard that before, so I'm interested to learn more. But I think it was very good.
Well, I would say from my experience, when they talk about studying the Old Testament, they try to keep you focusing on the context and the historical clues in that particular time. And so if you did that, it would be Hezekiah. But as obviously we are 2,000 years from this or 2,500 years from this, and so we know it's Jesus. And so, yeah, if you look in the context, it's Hezekiah, but prophetically it deals with Jesus Christ. Krista, I sent it to the Yahoo email.
That'll work.
Okay. I don't have that one. So, all right. Any closing remarks? And I sent section 3 as well. Questions for that for next week.
This was probably my favorite week.
Same.
Even though I did week 1 twice, I still like this one way better.
It gets better. I will make sure the questions are not quite as hard. So,
Well, it's not a question. I think it was just intriguing with the angels and everything. Like, there's just so much that we learned that we didn't know.
well, that's where Bible study comes into play. Hopefully, you always learn something.
Can you send the questions to the email too? I know Sheena post them, but it's easier for me to print them if at work.
Yeah, I emailed it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I just got finished with the questions just a few moments ago. And if y'all want to, y'all can watch those videos ahead of time or or watch them again in a sense, I can email y'all the link to the Right Now Media. Or do you have a Right Now Media account, Ashley or Crystal?
I don't think so. I'm using Eric's Google account, so I doubt I have that.
Okay. I mean, I didn't know if Prospect had it or not. But we had it at St. Plains. I used it at St. Plains.
Okay. I have no idea.
Okay. All right.
Yep,
Well,
it's not in your Bible, Ashley.
Girl, I have my Bible. That's all I need. Okay.
all right. Well, y'all, let's close with prayer. Any prayer requests before we close?